Hi, I'm Chelsea, and for today's video we are going to be doing a hack of the saltwater slip. So this is a idea that I shared on Instagram and on the blog about creating a saltwater slip that has a drop waist and then a gathered tier. And I think I'm actually going to lower the center back as well. So I'm just going to go over those pattern changes and some of the construction changes in this video. We're not going to go super into detail on like the sewing process of the saltwater slip because we do have like a full video sew along that you can watch. We'll link that down below. Yeah, so let's get started with some of the pattern adjustments. We're going to be shortening the front and back pieces, and I want the waist seam where the gathered tier starts to kind of hit around like right here. I know that I'm going to need to do some like trial and error with this because it's just hard to estimate where exactly it's going to fall. So I'm going to shorten it to 2 inches below this like lower notch on the front and the back. And then I might end up sewing the gathered tier onto that and then trying it on and seeing how it fits. Because of like the weight of the gathered tier and things like that, it's hard to estimate exactly where it is. And I feel like with these dropped waist seams that you want them to land like in the perfect spot. So we might be seam ripping, but we're gonna start by estimating at just 2 inches below that notch. Here's my shortened back piece, and it looks kind of freaky because it's so small, but I know that this is kind of low, so that's why it's such a short piece. It's still gonna get to my drop waist. I would like for the silhouette to have a slight A-line sweep, so I'm actually going to draw a line in to, I'm just kind of doing this arbitrarily because I'm doing it a quick and dirty version of this. I'm going to slash up this line and spread to give it more of like an A-line shape here. I think I'll probably add just about an inch. Keep in mind, I'm gonna add an inch to each side on the back and then also to the front. So that's adding like 4 inches total at this base. So this is it's going to make the dress fit a little bit looser, but that's okay because that's a cool vibe too. So I'm gonna tape a piece of paper behind here and then retrace this in. So there's that adjusted piece. I'm gonna repeat this process on the front. Here's what that front piece looks like. Now I'm gonna cut my pattern out and I'll use my adjusted pieces. The only other difference is that I don't want to sew the side ties in. I think I want to do a tie belt. So instead of cutting, I'll still cut my 2 tie pieces, but I'm just gonna sew them together at the back and create like one long belt. Now we need to calculate how big our gathered tier pieces need to be. So the length that I've identified that I want mine to be is 29 inches. I need to add 3/8 of an inch for seam allowance along the top, and then whatever I want for seam allowance for the hem, I'm gonna add an inch because it's easy. So we'll do the length, desired length plus 1 3/8, and then to find the width, we need to know the hem opening of the front and the back of our skirt, our slip. So mine are it's roughly 48 inches. So it's 24 inches on the front and 24 inches on the back. Now, this is not a super precise method because I'm doing this kind of the quick and easy way and not subtracting seam allowances because I don't think it particularly matters if it's off by a little bit when you're gathering a tier in, because you won't notice that it's not exactly 1.5 times the hem opening. So I have figured out that my hem opening is 48 inches and I want to do a tier that is 1.5 times larger than my hem opening. So 48 times 1.5 equals 72. 72 is a nice number because if we divide that by 2 to make a front and a back tier, that's 36. So it would be 36 inches wide by 29 plus 1 3/8, which is 30.38 inches long. And we're gonna need 2 of those. Pieces that are 36 inches wide by 30 3/8 inches long. I know that my fabric is 45 inches wide. So I know my fabric is 45 inches wide, and I'd rather not waste like that chunk of fabric that would be between 36 and 45. What is that? 9 inches on each side. So we're gonna have a more gathered tier in an effort to create less waste. And also, when you're gathering this in, it doesn't really, like, you don't have to be super precise. So I'm just going to do the width of my fabric instead of the 36. So it's 2 panels that are 30 3/8 inches long. Got that? Okay, so I have basically sewn a shortened saltwater slip, and I have here like just a long camisole basically. So now I'm gonna get started on the skirt, and I have my 2 panels here. My first step is going to be to sew them together along these shorter edges on both sides. So I'll sew them right sides together. Because I used the full width of my fabric and this selvage is really beautiful, it doesn't have any like extra thing in it on either side, I don't need to finish these edges. So I'm just gonna sew these together to basically make one big loop. Okay, so in the last step, I said I was sewing this big piece into a loop, and I've done that. Now I'm going to add gathering stitches to the top. So I will lengthen my stitch to 5 to 6 millimeters long, and I'm gonna sew my first pass 1/4 inch from the edge, and then also another one, another row of stitches 1/2 inch from the edge, and I'm gonna do separate stitches so I'll go do a long straight stitch across the front, and then another one across the front, so 2 parallel, and then I'm gonna repeat that for the back, so that when I'm pulling in, I can proportion those gathers. I have the reference point of like half being for the front and half being for the back. So I'll do that now and I'll show you. Okay, so here are those stitches sewn on here. So you can see I've got one here, and we're gonna use those we're gonna pull in to gather this tier. As you can see, it's quite big. So here is here's my bodice, and I'm gonna put this inside here so that these are right sides together. And then the first thing I'm gonna do is match up the side seam of my gathered tier with the side seam on my shirt. Or I guess it's a bodice, it's not a shirt. And then I'm gonna do that on the other side as well. Okay, so now I have all this excess gathered tier that I need to gather in. So I'm gonna find my bobbin threads on here and start pulling on them gently. They should flow kind of nicely, but if they're not, don't pull too hard because you don't want to break these threads. So then you have to resew it, and it's such a pain. I like to get kind of roughly to the distance, or get my tier gathered in roughly to where it's supposed to be, and then go in and refine to distribute the gathers like really nicely. Now I'm flipping it to the other side. Okay, so here is that done. And now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew it using our seam allowance. Okay, so here is the first try on, and I haven't pressed this seam yet, so it's a little bit puffy, but what I can notice off the bat is it's way too long. I think I'll probably take at least like 4 or 5 inches off the bottom. And I did want this kind of like comfortable flowiness, and I'm gonna add the tie belt, so I haven't sewn that, but I do have a belt here. I'm gonna throw that on. Okay, here's it belted. Yeah, and I'm really liking the shape and the airiness of this fabric. I'm glad that I added a little bit of the A-line sweep to the silhouette, because I think that that is gonna give it more of that breezy thing that I'm looking for. Sorry, I don't know why I'm doing this right now. Yeah, so I'll start by taking some length off and check back in. There's 4 inches cut off, and I think I still want to go even a little bit shorter, but I think instead of cutting it, I'm going to take like a generous hem. So I'm gonna turn the hem under probably 1.5 inches twice to remove another 3 inches, but it'll still be there in case at some point I want like a longer dress again. Yeah, so I just need to do that, and then I need to sew this belt, and then I think I'm gonna make a matching bag. Hi, here I am in the finished dress. I actually finished filming the tutorial a few weeks ago and have been wearing this dress, and it has become like, it's definitely gonna be my summer fave, because I love the way that it could be, like I actually really like the way it looks loose with just the dropped waist. It feels kind of like just easy, and if it's hot or, you know, running around, I like this feeling. And then if I wanted to have more of a waist, I can tie this onto it and be more snatched, as the kids say, I guess, but it's still not super snatched. This just gives it a waistline, so it's a different look. And I love it. I'll do do like a far away shot so you can see the whole thing. But yeah, I think it's just a super fun dress that I also, like, as I was making it, thinking about other fabrics I could make it out of. Like, I was like, oh, linen. I think it would look great in like a rayon challis. I have this like kind of interesting silk I haven't known what to do with for a long time, because this doesn't have a ton of style lines on it. And so it's gonna be easier if you're working with like a difficult fabric, it'll be easier to sew. So I'm thinking maybe of using a chiffon. Anyway, yeah, that's the dress. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and happy sewing.